Welcome to this week's What's for Dinner video. My name is Ashley. I'm going to be showing you 3 different meals I made this past week. I don't always follow recipes exactly, but if you're interested, I've linked some similar recipes down below. So the first dinner I'm going to be showing you, I made a cheesy beef pasta. I don't really have a specific name for it. I am just taking 1 pound of ground beef and I'm going to brown this up, cook it all the way through, and then drain the excess grease. One of my favorite things about cooking is just creating my own dishes, mixing ingredients together and creating my own sauces. I think that's truly like the most fun part about cooking. So this is exactly what I'm doing for this meal. I just had the idea of a beef pasta and I'm just going with it. So once the beef was done, I just went ahead and drained the grease. I believe this was an 85-15 ground beef. And then I'm just taking a paper towel to kind of dab the rest of the oil in the pan. So next I'm going to season the ground beef. I'm using some minced garlic, some onion powder, Italian seasoning, paprika, and I used some Cajun seasoning as well because I honestly put that in everything. I really want the seasonings to cook into the meat. I'm a huge fan of seasoning each layer so that everything has really nice flavor. So I'm just going to mix this around and let it cook, and then I'll add in my tomato sauce. So next I'm going to add in a medium-sized can of tomato sauce. I'm just going to use the whole thing. I'm going to stir this into the meat, and I'm actually going to want the tomato sauce to cook, so I'm going to leave it as this and just let the flavors cook together. So again, I'm going to season this layer. I am using some garlic powder, Italian seasoning, and onion powder. I don't actually add any salt until the end. So once this has been cooking for a bit, I'm going to add in my water. I think I added about 1.5 cups of water total, and then I'm going to use my chicken bouillon to create chicken broth. I will probably never buy chicken broth boxes or containers again. This chicken bouillon powder has truly changed my life. So next I knew I wanted to add a little bit of creaminess to this dish and this pasta sauce, so I'm adding in some spoonfuls of cream cheese. I also did add a little bit of heavy cream at the end. If there's any tip I could give to anybody, it would be just make your own sauces. Just attempt and experiment, and that is truly how I learned how to cook. So I felt like the sauce needed a little bit more seasoning. I added some beef bouillon, some smoked paprika, onion powder, and some more Italian seasoning. So while I was cooking the sauce, I had half a box of rigatoni noodles boiling in some water. I just drained them, and now I'm going to add them into the sauce. I'm going to toss everything together in the same pot, and then I'm going to add in my cheese. So I'm going to add in my medium cheddar. I really wanted this to be like a cheesy pasta. I love cheese. So when this was just about done, I went ahead and threw in some broccoli in the oven. So just like with any pasta I make, I love to garnish it with some dried parsley flakes. So I just poured in a little bit, and I'm just going to toss this around, and this will be ready to go. This is how everything looked when it was done. It was so good, and definitely good as leftovers as well. The next dinner I'm going to be showing you is my creamy chicken tortilla soup. So I'm going to work on the soup and the sauce. At the same time, I do have a couple chicken breasts cooking in my Instant Pot that I'm just going to shred up and then toss them in the soup. So I'm starting out with a half stick of butter. I'm just going to let that melt down and I'm going to season it. I'm going to be creating a roux. So since this is a Mexican style soup, I'm going to use some Mexican seasonings. I use some cumin, taco seasoning, onion powder. I also did use a teaspoon of minced garlic. So the next step for this roux is to add in my flour. I don't have any measurements. I'm just adding in flour as I go and stirring it in with a whisk. So next I'm going to add in my water and start whisking it in slowly. I don't know exactly how much water I added. It kind of really is just up to how much soup you want. I wanted a good amount because we were having this for leftovers. And then I'm adding in my chicken bouillon powder. So I'm going to season the soup with all of those seasonings like taco seasoning, onion powder, and cumin. I'm also going to add in 1 can of black beans. I love a thick, creamy soup. That's really the only way I would eat soup. So I'm adding in some heavy cream, and then once that cooks up, I'm going to add in my Velveeta cubes. So next I'm going to add in my shredded chicken. I think I cooked 2 large chicken breasts. So since I wanted to make this soup a little bit more on the thick side so I can eat it with some chips as well, I added in some cornstarch slurry, which is just equal parts cornstarch and water. You just kind of want to do this until it's your desired thickness, but keep in mind that as it cools, it will also thicken as well. So of course I have to add some cheddar cheese to the soup. This is just the same medium cheddar that I used. So the last step is to taste test everything. I added a little bit more onion powder and cumin. I didn't add any salt because the bouillon does have salt as well as the cheese. This is how everything looked when it was done. Definitely my favorite soup that I made. I just topped it with some fresh jalapenos, avocado, cilantro, and some tortilla strips. The last dinner I'm going to be showing you, I made some delicious chicken quesadillas. You can never go wrong with a chicken quesadilla. So I'm just starting out with some chicken breasts, 2 of them. I'm going to kind of dry rub the front and back, top and bottom. I'm going to use some garlic salt, taco seasoning, cumin, onion powder, and some smoked paprika for some more color. So I'm just going to rub that in and make sure everything is coated. So next I'm going to cook up these chicken breasts. I'm just throwing in a half stick of butter, letting that melt down and the pan get nice and hot. And then I'm going to place both chicken breasts in the pan. So once they were nice and browned on the one side, I just went ahead and flipped them, and then I like to put a lid on top to keep the heat and also keep the chicken nice and juicy. This is how the chicken looked when I took it off. It was so good. So while the chicken rested and cooled before I could cut it, I went ahead and made a quick guacamole with some really small avocados, honestly. For my quick guacamole, when it's just a dipping side, I like to use some lime juice, garlic salt, pepper, and sometimes onion powder. So next I'm going to work on making the quesadillas. I'm just making 1/2 for me. Just laid down some jack cheese. I'm going to spread out some chicken and then top it with some cheddar cheese. So next I'm just going to do the same thing for my husband's. I'm just making a full quesadilla this time, spreading out the jack cheese, lay some chicken down, and then top it with the cheddar cheese. So making a quesadilla is pretty self-explanatory, but I do like to use canola oil spray or olive oil spray instead of butter to make my quesadillas. I do like to lay my quesadilla down and then put a lid on top, and I think that just kind of helps keep the heat inside and melt the cheese. This is how everything looked when it was done. I just topped the quesadilla with some guacamole, sour cream, and cilantro. I just love chicken quesadillas. Thank you so much for watching this week's What's for Dinner video. Make sure you come back next week for another one.